Hello, my name is Maddie, and this is Matty Does Life. Now, I have I have dyslexia, and dyslexia it really affects my output, like really bad. Like I they try to hold me back several times in elementary school because my handwriting is so bad, and they're like, you have to have good handwriting. That's part of the educational process. And it didn't matter how much I practiced, how much I tried, my handwriting looked like crap. And there are several different things that I would do, how my hand would work, is just this interruption between my output, between my brain and my hand. And it wasn't just writing, it was also drawing. Like, I literally, to this day, decades later, cannot draw a straight line with a straight edge. My my hand wanders too much, and it's not essential tremors. It's nothing like that. It is just part of how my dyslexia affects me. There's probably a separate thing for dyslexia that affects the output. I'm sure there's a separate term for that. Honestly, I don't really care about what you call it. It's just there, and the exact term for it doesn't really impact that it's there. And I really don't think at this point in my life that it's going to get better if I'm as old as I am. If it's still there and I've been working on it my whole life, it's not going to get better. And yet, for years, I've been able to do calligraphy. And that is such a shock. And it still shocks me because it's writing, it's drawing, two things that I cannot do. Two things that, just doesn't matter how much I do them, I'm not going to be able to do them. But I am able to do this very specific thing because the brain is just weird, right? The How we process things, how we take things in and how we output it, just a small different what seems like such a small difference in effect in how we do something can have this huge different outcome. And I mean I've done wedding invitations for friends before. That's because I can do calligraphy. And it's really it's confusing. It's confusing. I have my academic background is in applied anthropology, and one thing that time after time, people are weird, right? There is no really such thing as normal. You can talk about median, you can talk about average. They mean two different things, and yet just try finding somebody who fits that profile, because everyone is going to be on a different place at the spectrum. I mean, technically with median you are going to have one person who's median, but whose median is going to depend on what you're talking about. And all of this goes because one of the things that I have observed regularly is that how we do things in our personal lives is different than how we do things professionally in a lot of cases. Um, you can have everything is in perfect order in your own life, and you go to work and you just fall apart. And the opposite can be true as well. I know how I function when I am working with somebody else. For example, if I'm like working with somebody financially, how I handle that is a lot different than how I handle my own. Not that I have different outcomes, but there's just the care that is taken. Um, and I will always look out for somebody else more thoroughly than I will look out for myself. And that's and that can be a huge problem, because if I have that kind of difficulty with my own life, how am I going to be credible to somebody else? Well, part of it is that, you know, they don't know. They don't know what you're like in your personal life. they only know what you're showing professionally. But another way is by, when there's a problem, you just say, hey, I have this issue as well. And honestly, in my experience, talking about the issues that you have with the person across the table from you, who also have these same issues, or have issues that might be comparable or maybe even completely different, but they have issues and you have issues, and you can talk about those issues and you can help them, and you can let them know that it's okay, and but also, if you share your stories, then you can say things that can trigger something in somebody else, something that maybe they haven't thought of in that particular way, because we're all locked into our own brains, right? We're all locked into our own sense of, this is how the world is, this is my perspective, and I can't see it from anybody else's perspective. I can read about other people's perspectives, but reading and hearing can be two different things. They engage the brain differently, so they can have different impacts. So, reading a story can have a different impact than listening to the same story from the same person. It's going through your ear holes instead of your eye holes. And somehow that makes a difference in how our brain translates it, how it has, and how it impacts us. And that's something that that different perspectives, different ways of processing. And none of this is like there's one way that's right, one way that's wrong. Obviously you want, ideally, everything is done like in a way that makes sense, right? Everything has its effect. But the human brain doesn't work like that. So sometimes all it takes is a different perspective, sharing a story, maybe sharing an anecdote. If you have problems and you see somebody with problems, I'll tell you what, when I'm sitting across the table from someone and their kid is having problems, not able to sit there, not able to, I engage with the kid. Because that was me. That was me. The parents don't know that was me, but that was me. And then I talk about how that was me, about how I had similar problems, and how, in fact, to this day, I still have some of these qualities that they still impact me. But as I've gotten older, I've figured out how to make them work for me, and I've figured out how to mellow things, and other things have just mellowed on their own. But and that can have, I've seen that have a big effect on both the kid and the parents, because the parents, they're locked into who their kid is today, right? They're locked into who their kid is today, how they were yesterday, and they don't have a clear understanding of where their kid is going to end up. And when you have somebody who is maybe on a more professional level, or at least plays the professional at work, and you say, oh, I had that problem too, or that reminds me a lot of me when I was that age, and they go, really? And the kid goes, really? And you become, even if you have problems that they can't see, or maybe things aren't as perfect as they appear to them, that doesn't matter, because you're giving somebody hope about the future, and you're giving somebody hope about what could be, and it tells them that there is something that can that these things are not an impediment to success, which is something that we try to teach our kids, right? We try to teach parents. We try to teach everyone, and it's great to read those words. It's great to hear those words, but again, the whole, is it impactful? Is it impactful? And the thing that I talk with a lot of people. And you know what I find out? As I talk about my problems, my struggles with people, they open up about their own problems, their own struggles, their own issues, and I don't think I've talked with anybody who's like, oh, and I don't have anything. I mean, everybody has something. Everybody has something. And that also means that everybody has something that they can offer other people to give them a little bit of hope. Because you may not be able to draw, you may not be able to write well, but maybe you can do calligraphy. Why? Who knows? The human brain is just really weird, but that is the truth. And I know that this is this may be an odd topic for a podcast episode, but hey, you're listening to me, and this is what I have to say. I think that one of the things that we need to do as individuals is to kind of take stock of the things that we actually can do and the things that we struggle with, and see if there are any surprising gaps there that you wouldn't ordinarily consider, that you wouldn't think about, and just because you have problems with one thing doesn't mean that you're going to have problems with something that is adjacent, because your brain may process it just a little bit differently, and you might be good at it. You might be good at it despite your preconception that, oh, I'd be horrible with it because of this. I don't do arithmetic without a calculator. I don't. And if you know where I work, that would be very surprising to you, because, and certainly I can just hear all of my math teachers from elementary school shaking their heads because, oh, you are still having to do that. And back then, the big thing was, you have to learn how to do this without a calculator, because you can't, because it's not like you're going to have a calculator with you everywhere you go. Yeah, actually I do. But that really isn't the issue. The issue is I use a calculator on basic arithmetic because of how my brain processes numbers. As in, I can derive the right answer, but put down the wrong answer, and I can see it 3 or 4 or 5 times and not catch that I made that error. Whereas if I have something that I can compare that to, on a calculator, for example, I can make sure that I have the right, that my answer is correct. Because although my brain will see the number as will see the wrong number as the right number, if I have something identical to compare it to, it will immediately pick up the difference between the two. Again, don't know why. It's just a little bit different, and a little bit of a difference in how the brain processes things. And that's, and for those of us who have specific problems like that, it really does kind of suck. I would love to be able to say, oh, this is offset by this specific benefit, and I'm not sure that there is like an association between that problem and any particular benefit. You know what? Don't care. It is what it is. Life is life. Not everything is going to be causally linked. Not everything is going to be a clear-cut line between A and B, even within our heads. Maybe particularly within our heads, because we're people, and people are messy, and our brains are messy, and how we behave is messy. And there isn't necessarily consistency even from one sphere of our lives to the other, because again, we process those different things in different ways, those different situations in different ways. What I do for myself is going to be probably not done nearly as thoroughly and as exactly as the same task done for somebody else. And and of course, there are people who are completely the opposite. And you could say that, oh, it's because you don't apply yourself in this way or that way, but it's also because the different circumstances, the different situations, the different perspectives, our brains just work differently in those different spheres. And it's I don't know of anyone who's done like brain imaging to actually address this. These are my observations, right? This specifically what I'm talking about today. I don't think is backed up by actual scientific studies. I don't. I and to my mind, a properly constructed study on this would involve people having brain scans to see what areas of the brain are activated, see what is going on neurochemically in there, which is possible, but um, but really not very feasible in a lot of cases. You're just not going to be able to do a lot of brain imaging at in that way for those for those for that purpose. So that's just so it's not scientific. What I say isn't scientific. It's observational. It's anecdotal. This is but it's based on me watching a lot of people, talking with a lot of people. And as somebody who's trained in anthropology, you know, I find that kind of data to be useful. I find those kinds of that kind of collecting um, to be to be beneficial, especially because you can't study everything the same way, right? And uh, we have so much variation between us and within us, and it's part of what makes being human so just like great is because the way that you think, the way you perceive things is different than the way I think, the way I perceive things, and we get together and we solve each other's problems. And that's basically society in a nutshell. So the fact that you may struggle with things, the fact that I may struggle with things, the way that we think of that our brains work just a little bit differently, can give a can mean that we can help each other in ways that can sometimes be surprising. Anyway, that's all I have for you today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for joining me. If you appreciate what I do, if you want to help us with our project, our affordable housing project, there's a link to Patreon down below. $3 a month will help us. Will go big way towards helping us. You can become part of our community, access to Discord and other perks. We're gonna have some bonus material on there eventually. I have a couple of things in the works regarding that, and as always, I hope you have a great day and continue being awesome.